Welcome to MTS Live, another beautiful day on the timeline. We have two fantastic folks on the call to chat with today. We've got Sheel and Theo. I think it almost goes without introduction. How are you this morning or this afternoon, Sheel?
Great. Yeah, great to be here.
Sheel, while you're
And Theo?
here, actually, I'm good. But Sheel, while we have you, before we get into the good stuff, I actually have a question.
Okay.
Why are you asking?
Yeah, I love food and I love Indian food specifically. It's funny, like growing up, I grew up in the States and my family would eat Indian food every day. And when we grew up, I was like, why are we eating this crap? And, like my mom would pack me lunches of Indian food and I'd be so upset about it. And then now I like can't get enough Indian food. Like I'll be like on vacation in Europe. You should be eating European food, but I'm just like I'm craving Indian food. Um, okay, so yeah, favorite Indian spots. So I live in the city. Um, I think and my favorite types of food are Indian snack food. I think in
Oh, hell yeah.
general, you in general, if you're like looking at an Indian food menu, start on the left and order a lot on the left. Order more appetizers than you do mains for a group. Um, and my favorites are Jalebi Street. It's really pretty authentic street food. It's in the Haight. I like Udupi Palace on Valencia Street for South Indian dosa. Also in the Mission, there's another place called Kola Pasi that's very good, and a brand new one called Bangalore Udari. This is in Foster City, and it's Bangalorean food, which you may never have had this type of food. In fact, most of the items on the menu I myself have never had before. A unique type of food that I think everyone should try.
MTS exclusive. This is fantastic. In Australia, I think most of the Indian migrants that opened restaurants here were Punjabi. And
Punjabi,
so
that's also true here, by the way.
there we go. So there's a surplus of Punjabi food, which I'm not upset about. I love a creamy, saucy dish as much as the next man. But we're definitely leading here on the regional Chinese food, regional Indian food. Not yet broken through, but my fingers are crossed. Looking on the lookout for some Bangalore food in Melbourne. That's a good one. If you know anyone,
Yeah.
if you're watching this right now and you know a good Bangalore restaurant in Melbourne, Australia, please message me immediately. But we're here. I mean, that's great. It was a perfect place to start here because we are talking today about a very serious subject. So OpenAI has announced that they have started the OpenAI deployment company. Someone I think very
Yeah.
aptly pointed out on Twitter that it sounds like a defense contractor.
Yeah, it does.
It's a great way to
Deployment
make everyone feel
company
relaxed.
Came from Palantir's forward deployed engineers.
Yeah, they really did a tremendous job turning consulting into forward deployment, and now everyone's kind of taken it. But it's fair. It's fair. You have engineers out there. It's different than consulting, but it really is consulting in a way.
Generous of you, Sheel. Yeah. So why don't you start? Maybe Theo or Sheel. Either one of you. Talk to me. Like I've just kind of woken up this morning. I've seen this news, and I'm like trying to like interpret. I mean, my view would be if you have the Dwarkesh Patel view of AGI progress, and he has this like phrase that he uses, which I think might be borrowed from someone else, where he says like the country of geniuses in a data center.
That's Dario.
Now,
Yeah.
Dorkesh.
That's a Dario. That's a Dario,
Yeah.
of course. Is that machines? Anyway,
This is
that's
like
a Darioism.
the guy who popularizes the term always gets the credit for it, not the guy who created the term.
Yeah.
And correctly, of course, distribution is everything. So, country of geniuses in the data center, in my view, it does beg the question: if you have a country of geniuses in the data center, what do you need a deployment company for?
I think this is like a broader broader question of if we're moving to AGI, we certainly seem to be making a lot of steps in different directions from AGI. I think the reality is maybe we don't believe in that vision
Yeah.
of AGI, and maybe
Yeah.
Who's we?
along the way, who's we? We is
Sam
myself and Sam Altman. Yeah, probably more Sam Altman, much more important to me. But I think like if you think about a lot of the actions lately, or maybe the other way to say it is this company needs to go public and just to raise more capital. And to go public, you can't sell this like we're going to get to AGI and everything is going to be magical. You need to say like we're going to get revenues by doing X. And I think deployment is one way to do that. A lot of what they've done at the app layer is another way to do that. And it just certainly makes sense. And it should be noted that I think OpenAI got a lot of publicity for it this morning, but I was kind of surprised. Like a month ago, I feel like Anthropic announced a similar thing, which is like an
That was a
AI
week ago.
services company, and didn't. Oh, it's only a week ago. Okay.
A month in AI land.
Who knows?
Did feel like a month
Yeah,
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was 2 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
In AI, in AI
Yeah.
time, it was a month, but it was 7 days ago.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So, and then you always wonder with the competition between them, are they like they announced it, now we got to announce it. But what's interesting is OpenAI announced a larger roster of folks who are investing and supporting it, including affiliates of McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. I myself am a BCG alum, and my wife's a McKinsey alum, so I know the consulting world well. And I think that's kind of interesting. Like the stalwarts of consulting are investing, and sort of speaking to our friends that are partners at those firms, like folks that worked with us and stayed. They are scared shitless of AI. So
Yeah.
I think they see this as an opportunity to, if the demise is happening, at least they can get a piece of what's going to cause that demise. But I think like more broadly from a consulting lens, which is what I come at from, like consulting used to be this like boutique strategy thing where you were advising the executive team only. And then actually what changed that was like Mitt Romney and Bain. And Bain became more of a implementations firm than a strategy firm. So we'd sell you this, BCG would sell you the strategy, and then they didn't want to implement it. And then Bain came along and they said, we'll implement it too. And I think at that implementation point is where AI can really do a lot of damage. And that's also when the pyramid structure of the consulting firm started, where like you had one partner, but then a bunch of associates doing all the grunt work. And now I think AI can do so much of the grunt work. And I think you'll see that with this company.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like, and maybe you can give some more color here, Sheel, but like, it strikes me that the strategy consulting model, like, has had a few different lives. It's grown enormously since it started, and over that time, it seems like there's a few different phases. And there was this early phase where it was like, the consulting industry, the strategy consulting industry was about like, there was a bunch of information arbitrage. You could learn a lot at Harvard Business School. And that was taking a long time to filter through to the tractor companies or the, like the kind of manufacturing companies or the kind of banks in the Midwest, whatever it was, these kind of mid-market companies. And so your arbitrage, you'd take a grad out of Harvard Business School and you'd put a nice little suit on them and some shiny black shoes and you'd send them off, and they really could kind of add value in they could kind of have this strategic direction if we just like pause our skepticism for a moment. You can imagine them coming into the boardroom and being like, have you guys heard about advertising? And the kind of Midwestern bank being like, oh, we don't really do that around here. And so that was kind of this one phase. But then you had this whole other phase where it was actually seemed to me from the outside to start becoming more and more about kind of creating plausible deniability or a kind of giving a plausible case to the executive from an outside firm that they could then go or no go. And so you'd kind of have this situation. I'd talk to my friends who are in consulting and they'd say, oh yeah, we kind of know what we're supposed to deliver. We kind of know what we're supposed to be doing, this report on what they should do about XYZ. We kind of know what answer they want.
And the senior partner kind of like knew what the answer was going to be. And then like I had to do all this grunt work to make it so.
Yeah, and I've worked in the public sector. I work for government, and the strategy consultants have this like little niche in government where they come in and they write like this. They make a super nice deck, and so you have this like, and they kind of launder that into a policy position or a nice little shiny policy paper. Now, I'm not saying that has no value, but I mean, kind of what you're getting at is if the internet kind of destroyed a lot of the information arbitrage from Harvard Business School to the C-suite, and the process of young consultants leaving the consulting sector to go and join the C-suites of fledgling companies and do it from the inside, that kind of changed that arbitrage. And then it seems to me that it kind of one of the things that AI is threatening to do here, Sheel, is like very quickly change that like consulting production function where you get a bunch of grads in and you're like really impress everyone by how quickly you can put a shiny deck together, which you just do by like working really hard.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah. I think, I think there's like in the stack of the work that you do as a consulting firm, I think there's like to your point, there's like slide production, benchmarking, a bunch of like uh, spreadsheet work, and then there's a lot of like what AI can I think do really well, which is like implementation tracking, change management, like
Right.
all of this kind of stuff that I think the AI with this like forward deployed model can do really well and require fewer folks. So you don't have the teams of like 10 junior analysts coming on board because you can just have an AI go into the system, extract the relevant information, and not need teams of young people flying out in suits.
I think the question for me, one of the things that OpenAI did with this deal, so we're discussing, if you're just joining us now, we're talking about OpenAI's announcement about their deployment company. And they've taken on some outside fundings.
Bain and then B Capital, who is an affiliate of Boston Consulting Group. So they've got all the big ones.
They acquired like an AI an AI implementation company. What's the take there?
So I hadn't heard of them before, but apparently it's basically like they have 150 forward deployed engineers already, and they seem to be working with a bunch of big companies. Like it's like a AI, it's like a AI McKinsey sort of thing. And they're working with like Tesco, they're working with Virgin Atlantic, they're working with Supercell and a bunch of others. So it seems like an interesting company, the right kind of thing to acquire. Probably like it gets them up to speed quickly with like 150 folks who are already doing in this line of work. It makes total sense.
I mean, yeah, look, you say it makes sense. I'm inclined to trust your judgment on this over mine, Sheel. But I'm like kind of just struck at like there's a conversation's been happening for a while. People just talking about how important, or whether or not it's important for these leading labs to have focus in what they're doing. And I don't know.
This is definitely like on the road to AGI, right? Like you can't just create the super intelligence and let it completely shred through the economy. You need to have institutions in place to be able to handle it.
That's interesting. I kind of see where you're going, and I probably tend to agree. I think the world we're living in now seems to be one in which like a smart undergrad can be like quite high value at implementing AI stuff in the enterprise. And I think fine, that's the world you live in. But I do just think like I don't know, OpenAI probably could have trained 154 deployed engineers themselves.
And if you don't get like AGI in the next year, like you need to be able to pay for the data center. So like you have to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for them, like recruiting 150 engineers from scratch to do this is probably like not trivial. It's probably easier and not that expensive relative to how crazy their valuation is to acquire a company. So I think if it jumpstarts them even a little bit, it's probably worth it.
What do you think we should be watching here, Sheel? So you mentioned a week ago Anthropic announced their own collaboration with the big consulting firms. Anthropic launching this as a kind of semi-separate corporate structure, the OpenAI deployment company. What do we watch here? What do we keep an eye on to kind of see like where this is going, how it's panning out? What should we be looking at?
I think what we'll look at is, I think you'll start to see it in earnings reports. I think a lot of people are going to be bragging about the results, whether real or not. We've seen various levels of enthusiasm for AI and more skepticism than I would have expected in the Fortune 500, actually.
One thing that concerns me a little bit about this kind of move is if you look at the one of the big risks for AI in general, but also for the broader economy, is like, how do we regulate this? How does this end up getting regulated? And like it's not a unique observation, but the way that they have spoken, the way that the CEOs of leading labs and leading AI researchers and leading safety researchers have spoken about AI, it's created a lot of fear in like the population. It's created a lot of fear in people, right? People are worried, and the way like this kind of meme, this very persistent meme about the persistent underclass, the deployment of like AI efficiency gains as justification for layoffs in a bunch of different companies. It strikes me like kind of one of the risks here is no one really believes any of the positive implications of advancements in AI because they just go, that's fluff, that's Sam Altman marketing propaganda. But they are inclined by nature to believe all of the kind of negative criticisms of AI. They're inclined to believe by nature this thing uses so much water that it's going to drain the oceans. They're inclined to believe by nature this thing is going to cause structural unemployment that's going to ruin a generation's chances. And one thing that kind of worries me is if you're Sam Altman, I think there's a sign that they have taken, and Dario too, that they have taken some of this on board and they've tried to start switching some of their comm strategy here a little bit to stop emphasizing this is going to paperclip us all and it's going to send everyone into permanent unemployment. And then what you go and do is you start a deployment company where you hire a bunch of forward deployed engineers and you send them into public companies to deploy AI. If you're the CEO of a public company and you've just hired OpenAI deployment company to come in and do an audit or do some consulting, whatever it is, and the thing that comes out of that, which you want to tell to the shareholders in order to boost your own stock price is, using AI, we managed to lay off a bunch of people who otherwise we were paying a bunch of money. And then you go, thanks, OpenAI deployment company. With their help, we laid off 10,000 people. And you go, hold on. You're just completely losing control of the narrative. It's a whole section of the comms game, which is now completely out of your hands. Do you have any thoughts on that, Theo? And then I'll get your reaction too, Sheel.
The idea is, maybe firms will be able to do a lot more with fewer people. Maybe firms will be able to do a lot more with the same amount of people without laying people off. They'll just increase output a lot. Maybe a lot of people will get laid off and then will get absorbed into other companies or found their own companies or use AI to create very small firms with only a few people or maybe one person. There are a lot of angles here that aren't just like you are now laid off from your company and now you are completely unemployable and in the permanent underclass. And if you are, there will certainly be some kind of UBI mechanism, because if there isn't, there will be revolt.
I have to. This is your lawyer speaking. I have to stop you right now. I think that I agree. I kind of agree with where you're going. I'm like a kind of trad neoliberal economist by nature, and I'm like, yeah, of course, you make everyone more efficient. Technology is good. You might have some short-term structural unemployment. The long-term productivity gains far outweigh the short-term. But what I'm saying is, just from a commerce perspective, from OpenAI's perspective, do you want a bunch of earnings announcements where you or layoff announcements from public companies to be tied directly to thanks for your help, OpenAI deployment company, we're laying off 10,000 people?
No. But you could have an earnings report that says this company was able to increase output by X%. Their earnings are way up. There are some layoffs. We're not going to highlight that. The people who are laid off are now working at this company or founding their own companies. Sam Altman, for example, has talked a lot about AI-created entrepreneurship. This has been a big theme of OpenAI comms in the last couple of weeks. Because if, getting onto the career ladder as a junior becomes more difficult, people, at least agentic people, are going to turn towards just doing it themselves with AI. And of course, AI-enhanced entrepreneurship has created enormous value. What is Cursor worth? $30 billion? And this company didn't exist 5 years ago.
Sure. I don't think that's how it's going to be received by the public. Sheel, I mean, maybe you can talk to this, because it seems like this is a problem that McKinsey has had. There was a sense, I think, I don't know if this is true or not, that there was a lot of challenges to Mayor Pete, back in 2016. There was a lot of he had a lot of things going against him, right? He was an openly gay man.
Totally,
he was kind of a neoliberal in a policy moment that was leaning further to the left. But one of the things that seemed to hurt him in that was people were oh yeah, he's a McKinsey consultant. Is that going to come on? Is that going to be the same? Is that going to happen to the OpenAI deployment company?
I think it's certainly possible. I think it's hard to control the narrative here. My wife worked with Pete. They started the same day at McKinsey. Wow. And he's a great guy. And they, all the work they did, he actually didn't even work on most of the projects that people blame him for. Anyway, I think AI has definitely, like consulting, has a branding issue. And last week, I canvassed for a local representative here in San Francisco. And we went around the neighborhood and asked, what do you care about most? And a lot of people said AI job loss. And I was surprised to hear it. Living in San Francisco, not far from where OpenAI was founded. But I think it's very real. And I think those of us in the tech world, we probably absolutely love AI, and every new model that comes out, we're excited. And it's interesting that even in San Francisco, the most tech forward place in the world, so many people are reluctant to embrace AI. And I think, to your point, people just fear job loss. And I think Dario in particular has not done a great job of messaging that. I think Sam also hasn't, but to your point, I think has gotten a lot better recently. And I think it's something that we're going to need to deal with. And I think it's going to come up in politics. A lot of folks are they're campaigning on opposition to AI, or certainly opposition to AI data centers. And I think people need to understand the good that will come of it. And I think we haven't done a good job broadcasting that. And I think this could be a negative, to your point.
Speaking of politics, you just tweeted about Mayor Daniel Lurie of San Francisco, who is immensely popular. He has a 74% approval rating, the highest of any mayor in America. So do you have any takes on whether Pratt will be able to win and if he will be able to become as popular as Lurie?
I think it's possible. I think my take on Pratt is, I think they're pretty different. Like, Lurie is like an introvert who, now does a lot of video, but never did before. And he's a very soft-spoken guy. Pratt's very like outspoken, personality. I think people are very pleasantly surprised with Lurie. Lurie, going into it, he'd never really held a real job for very long. Like he started a nonprofit that was focused on reducing homelessness in San Francisco, and it didn't do that great of a job. So I think a lot of us were thinking, like, is this guy the right guy for the job? But then he's been phenomenal, and everybody's very happy with how 74% of people are very happy with how it's gone. And I think Karen Bass has been relatively, ineffective, I would say, during her term. And I think there's a real chance that Pratt wins it. I do have concerns about Pratt. I don't live in LA, so it doesn't really matter. But the more I read about him, there's a lot of like crazy things. Like at one point, he and his wife really believed the world was going to end, and they spent all of their money over the course of a year or two. And it's
very Bay Area coded.
They spent $1 million on healing crystals.
Oh my God.
So, is that the guy I would want for mayor? No, but you have to look at who's running. And so amongst those who are running, he could be the best shot that they have to get out of this funk.
All right, well.
Big opportunity to spread a few healing crystals around LA. I haven't been there for a while, but it could do with a little aura work around the corners. Thank you so much for joining us, Sheel. You are at PitDesi on x.com.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We'll continue monitoring right after this message from our sponsors.
At MTS, we are always monitoring the situation in enterprise software. And right now, the situation is this. When AI code generation first emerged in 2022, NVIDIA master inventor and Harvard engineer Sid Pardeshi took a contrarian stance. Inference time compute and agent orchestration, not pre-training, would be the key to unlocking high-quality AI-driven software development in the enterprise. He believed the real breakthrough wasn't in how fast AI could generate code, but in how deeply it could reason to build enterprise-grade applications. While the rest of the world focused on copilots, he architected something fundamentally different. The first autonomous software development platform leveraging thousands of agents that is purpose-built for enterprise-scale codebases. Blitzy is unlocking 5x engineering velocity and delivering months of engineering work in a matter of days for Fortune 500 leaders right now. Transform the way you develop software. Discover how at blitzy.com. That's BLITZY.com. This episode is brought to you by Macroscope. The last time I went to San Francisco, I found that I couldn't go anywhere, even to the coffee shop, without hearing some founder talk about how they're shipping faster than ever. What they're not saying is that nobody on the team actually knows what got shipped, who shipped it, or whether it's about to break something in production. Macroscope is the AI codebase understanding company, and they fix that. They have 3 core products. The first one is Status, the best way to understand what's happening at your company and what all your engineers and agents are shipping. The second one is Code Review. All this extra code being shipped needs a robust defense layer. Macroscope is the highest signal code reviewer with the least noise. The third is Agent, a single layer of intelligence that synthesizes all the tools in your stack, issue management systems, code, docs, logs, and more, and answers questions, takes actions, and automates workflows for your team. Like an omniscient, always-on, uber-capable senior engineer, plus a product manager, plus a TPM, plus ops person that helps your team be 10 times more productive. Head to macroscope.com/MTS to get started. That's macroscope.com/MTS.
Hello, welcome back to MTS. I'm your host, Dana, and I'm joined today with Katherine. Hi, Katherine. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
3,700 people showed up to your Wasian meetup in New York City. When you were planning it, did you expect it to kind of hit a nerve and get as big as it did?
Yeah, so we planned it about 2-ish weeks ago. And yeah, I feel like we were just seeing this wave. I feel like it kind of got started with Heated Rivalries popularity, and then Alyssa Liu and Eileen Gu during the Olympics. So yeah, we just kind of decided to throw it together, and I feel like we were really able to get the first 1,000. Just kind of through Particle, honestly, because the event was a public event. And so a lot of people were able to discover it. It just kind of showed the inherent growth that can happen within the platform itself. I brought on my friend Nico as a co-host, and he was kind of like a Wasian /fitness influencer in 2020. So he made a video that got 400,000 views, and I think that pushed us to like 2,500. And then the rest of it to 3,800 was word of mouth. But yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool to see a lot of Wasians together.
I love that you touched on kind of the Eileen Gu, the Alyssa Liu stuff, because there's kind of like a whole cultural moment happening here with Wasian specifically, and Heated Rivalry as well. You know, we saw Leve as well with her music video I saw it described as the Wasian Avengers. What do you think people are really responding to here, and why do you think there's this momentum here, and why do you think people are identifying with that?
I got so many DMs of people telling me that it was the first time they had really felt seen and heard in an environment like that. Are you mixed?
Yes, I am also mixed. I'm not Wasian, but I am mixed as well. So,
cool.
Yes.
What is your mix?
So I'm half white and I'm half Caribbean. But it's kind of like a melting pot in the Caribbean. So you never know really what your background is.
I feel like the universal experience that was happening yesterday was that everyone looks really different and unique in a way, because there's so few of us that have like this background, but at the same time we all kind of share similar features.
There's definitely way more mixed people today than there were, say, 30, 50 years ago. And also I think to just tie that to the trend of kind of niche internet communities, where people can find themselves represented, whether that's race, whether that's, special interest groups, whatever that is, both kind of provide a space where people can have, these conversations, like you said, and see themselves represented. I'm also interested in the transition from the online kind of niche community into the IRL. And this seems to be, and maybe it's kind of like a third space in a way, that the internet's creating again.
It was really interesting because I didn't know what the conversion would be like, since we had 3,800 folks. Like, I feel like typically when I've hosted events, we get maybe like 50% conversion if it's a really public event like that. But I think there was like quite a bit, like quite good conversion. Like, I think in total, I would estimate maybe like 1,700 people were there throughout the 4 hours. And so, there was good conversion there. And then we converted it kind of back into URL, because we started a WhatsApp community where people could then connect further. And now there's sub-communities within that. Like, even at the event, there were people making announcements that they wanted like a Blasian meetup and a Gaysian meetup. And so there were like sub meetups happening at the meetup. So we now have sub communities within the broader WhatsApp. And it's really interesting. So this morning I bought the domain citizensofwasia.com, and we're going to maybe spin up like merch or something, because people were kind of chatting about like what we could do to further the like the community. And we had a lot of interest from folks around like further events that we could do. Like, I talked to someone that organizes raves, and someone that owns a restaurant in New York. So they wanted to collab on future events.
That's awesome. I noticed as well that it seemed like it was a lot of young people that showed up, in preponderance of young people that showed up at these events. And I was thinking too that this kind of relates. I feel like Gen Z have existed a lot online, probably more so than any other generation. For example, in my case, I worked at startups my whole career until I went out on my own, and I had never had to work IRL in my life. I never had a desk job where you had to show up and be there full time. And that kind of plays a role in how you interpret these moments and these kind of these meetups, because you never had those after work drinks. You never had those conversations at the water cooler. Do you think that was a thread or a conversation that was top of mind in these moments where people were like, I've never like had this kind of space?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the age range varied more than you'd think. Like the
Hmm.
oldest Wasian we had was 65.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
I met probably like 10 Wasian babies. Like a lot of people brought their babies, which I thought was
That's so
really
cute.
fun. Yeah, so I don't know if there was specifically a through line with age. For sure, I was skewing like maybe 24-ish, 25. But yeah, I think in general, people our age that grew up during COVID, that had jobs, like I graduated in 2020, so then
Hmm.
we had to, like my first job wasn't in person.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think because of that, there is this kind of surge in seeking community. And as like, and I think I've seen studies around like church attendance as well and trends related to
Hmm.
that. And so I feel like there is kind of this like yearning for community, in folks that kind of grew up or went through transition periods during COVID.
Hmm.
So yeah, I feel like that's also why there's an uptick in astrology and things like that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, these hyper specific identities are kind of, yeah, just grounding people. And this kind of in a way I feel like relates to the popularity too of like Corgi Cafe, for example, which is kind of a physical presentation
Yeah.
of kind of like an online culture too, which is also it's for the startup, but also just kind of like a physical moment that I feel people are yearning for.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I haven't been to Corky Cafe, but it seems like a really interesting idea, especially because I feel like in SF there is a yearn to have a third space
Hmm.
24/7.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I keep thinking about when we see, it's not just the Wasian meetup. There's been a ton of meetups or lookalike competitions or all these moments that go viral across the internet. And I'm thinking about, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. How do you think moments like these might evolve? Let's speculate for a moment about like where we might end up now there's a bit of momentum behind moments like this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like when it comes to these things, it's almost like viral moments happening in like a brief period. So there's just these like really like concentrated moments of spark joy. And I think that that's really interesting. And I feel like as like social media enhances and speeds up globalization and the reach of events, like the fact that we were able to host this 2 weeks ago and collect so many people and have word
Yeah.
spread so quickly, I think that'll only continue to happen faster as people get more online. So yeah, I feel like there will definitely be more kind of spontaneous things that try to foster serendipity and create like a spark of joy in IRL, which I think is something that people are craving with like the surge of AI.
Absolutely. I love that surge of or spark of serendipity. That's kind
Yeah.
of what it feels like. It feels like hitting a pulse or hitting a moment, and it does feel just so joyful.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on. That's actually a really good note. I feel like there's so much going on. There's all the news that you could possibly get is at your fingertips, and
Yeah.
just having something that feels so earnestly simple, and just about sharing and celebrating your identity, is so important. Now there's some people who I think are confused by the importance of these moments. I was kind of digging into people's reactions to these meetups. People don't understand the importance, don't understand the relevance or the reason for having something like this. What would you say to someone like that? What would your response be?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious where you found that.
I've just seen some idle comments like, why are we doing this? Why do we need these?
Mm.
Why do we need a meetup like this? What's the purpose? That was a couple questions I saw, and I thought that was an interesting thing to
Yeah.
respond to.
There's this craving for IRL, and like these waves in trying to reduce your screen time, for example, like the popularity of Brick.
Mhm.
And I think more and more people are willing to do things kind of just for the plot, especially if it means
Yeah.
that they can have an interesting IRL experience that gets them off their phones and kind of brings them back into the world and like quote unquote touching grass and things
Yeah.
like that.
This is kind of adjacent but relevant in that, when you walk, you're walking and you have music blasting in your ear, you have a podcast blasting. Staying present and actually just enjoying the moment and enjoying the people you're around is so important to kind of regulate and kind of center yourself. So that's a really good note. And we're almost up at time, but I wanted to ask you, and you kind of did hint at it. Do you see yourself planning more events like this? Would you go through it all again? Did you have fun doing it? But yeah, I'd love to hear about your future plans.
Yeah, so we created citizensofwasia.com today, and we have an Instagram account and a website, and then we have our WhatsApp community that's also linked on our Instagram account too, so you can like chat with other folks and meet
Mhm.
other folks. And then we have like little shirts that we're making just
I
kind of
love
for
that.
funsies.
I love that. That's amazing. Well, so citizensofwasia.com is the
Yeah.
website. That's
Yeah, and then
incredible.
we're gonna have another page for events in particular, because there's a lot of people kind of self-organizing their own events in other cities. Like I talked to someone from DC that wanted to plan one, in Atlanta, Toronto. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think there will be more.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Catherine. This was a lot of fun. And I'll be looking out for many more events and things to come from Citizens of Wasia.
Amazing.
We'll continue monitoring right after this message from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Merge, the connective layer for production AI. Look, I DoorDash Chipotle probably more than I should. And the thing I've come to appreciate is that I never think about what's happening behind the scenes. I tap a few buttons and a burrito shows up. That's the bar. That's exactly the problem with building AI agents right now. The hardest part isn't the agent itself, it's everything around it. Connecting to the tools your team and customers rely on, letting agents take action with the right permissions, and keeping everything reliable and cost efficient once you're in production. Merge handles all of that for you. It connects agents to thousands of tools, handles permissions and LLM routing, and lets teams move faster without building it all themselves. OpenAI, Dropbox, and Ramp use Merge to move fast and build AI right. Visit merge.dev/MTS to start building for free. All right, we are live with Stephen Glinert, who is the CEO and founder of Sphere Semi, which makes AI design chips. So, Steve, welcome to MTS.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you for having me on today. Really good to be on here. Would love to talk about what we do for a moment, and then you should just ask me questions about semiconductors. So we are a company based out of Bay Area, Palo Alto, and what we do is we've built an internal engine that can design mixed signal and analog chips, as well as do a lot of digital work as well. And we've decided instead of making a software product to actually just make chips. So we're a chip company. We make products, but what we specialize in are complex products that humans can't design. And for a lot of what we do now, the big customer is military, the big customer is defense. That's because defense has real needs in the space around getting things that are highly sophisticated, highly performant, highly bespoke. And we've been able to provide defense customers with the first AI designed chips that I think have ever been made. And so we're really, really excited about that. I mean, a lot of what we're doing is some of the coolest cutting edge stuff you can do. We're putting chips in satellites, we're putting chips in missile systems, we're putting chips in intelligence systems, electronic warfare systems. It's absolutely amazing what we've been able to do. And the reason we're able to do this, and the reason we're able to do this really fast, is because we have this AI engine that we've built internally that can just deploy chips as rapidly as possible. Northrop Grumman is the fifth largest defense company on the planet. You may know them from their hits like the B-2 bomber. I have been working with them on making AI designed chips, the first that are really being installed into military systems. The funny thing is that you can make really cool B-roll for chips, but it's actually pretty difficult because the function of a chip is not something you can watch, which makes it hard for us to advertise ourselves as the defense contractor in many ways we are, because there's nothing that explodes. But it's a pretty critical component.
for a
So
very
does-
experienced designer get cut down to 1 to 2 weeks. The thing that makes our AI technology unique is that it covers the entire design process. Humans can do this manually, but our AI system is able to navigate that space far more efficiently.
High-performing, highly customized mixed signal and analog chips are what really can make a critical difference. And we want to create that chip for you, and we want to empower you.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What exactly is the niche for specialized chips like yours? The sort of takeaway that a lot of people get from the AI semiconductor race right now is that like chips are a very general thing. So like NVIDIA manufactures like the majority of all of the chips that are used in AI training and inference, for example, and only a handful of other providers like Google and Amazon, much of which is internal, make up the rest. So how are why would they use a Sphere chip and not an NVIDIA one?
So the truth is that in order that we're actually starting on the level of building things that are, I guess you would call bespoke products, right? Products that have small niches but important niches. When you're in the semiconductor industry, it's important to choose your spot very, very, in a way that's very intelligent, right? You basically say, okay, I think there's a niche in this market for this sort of digitizer, for this sort of digital signals processor, and you go after that niche, you attack that niche, you build a product for that niche, and slowly but surely you build up towards products that are now moving into the data center, moving into much, much more, I would call high value, high volume areas. So our strategy has been to build digital signals processing chips, mixed signal chips for the defense world, and then slowly edge ourselves into moving into like more high volume areas. One of our big concepts is the idea of a universal digitizer. It's very hard to digitize high bandwidth signals, and so we've built some technology that allows us to do that extremely efficiently because we've been able to build AI designed sort of digitizing front ends, which allows us to build very efficient, very rapid, chips that can take in tons of information and then feed them onto a GPU. One of the applications, with massive application right now, is SATCOM and military systems, but we're also investigating robotics use cases as well. So for an AI designed chip, what you have to do is pick a spot where you can offer a critical advantage versus everyone else. Perhaps it's not the most high volume spot in the world because you do have standards, right? NVIDIA can just impose a standard. They can impose the market on people. But you have to pick a spot where you know that AI will provide incredible value that is above the competitors, and you're not actually attacking an area where there's an idea in the semiconductor industry that if you go after Broadcom, they're like the mafia. They'll come after you. They'll come after you in the night and they'll kill your dog, right? Like you don't want to go after the Broadcoms of the world. You want to go after some area where you can get volume, you can get margin, you can produce a lot of product, and because of AI, you have an asymmetric edge. So I think that's the way to think about the AI design chip race. There are people who are going to take big swings for AI design CPUs and AI design GPUs. We respect that, but we don't think that that's the best strategy. And in fact, a lot of chip companies that are IPOing now, like Astera, are taking a strategy without AI design of you go after something small, like a retimer in a data center, and then you go up from there, and eventually you go after the Broadcoms of the world.
We have Cerebras about to IPO. Their IPO is like incredibly oversubscribed. They've had to raise the price from, I believe, like the 110, 120 range per share to like 150, 160. So there's an enormous amount of demand for Cerebras. My understanding of Cerebras is they make a chip whose niche is the chip itself is really big, so they can fit a lot of memory on it, which helps with very fast AI inference on a very high level.
One of the reasons why a lot of Chinese, AI companies really want NVIDIA chips is because they learned how to build models, how to train models on NVIDIA chips. A lot of the volume coming in is not big training runs anymore. A lot of the volume is inference, and inference is going to take a lot of different infrastructure from a semiconductor perspective than model training, which obviously NVIDIA is still the best at. It's really hard to say who's going to win this. The whole semiconductor industry is in a real topsy-turvy situation right now. I could see any of the major players like AMD and Intel pulling ahead in some way against NVIDIA's market share. I could see Cerebras doing it. I could see people sort of carving off inference as a niche and training as a niche and like splitting that up for, for example, like Anthropic may decide that we're getting so much volume for Claude that we need to restructure our data centers and we need to think about inference as a separate a separate thing than the chips we use for training runs. Bit of a tangent, but there's some really cool, I think, technologies out there right now that are taking advantage of what it means for inference volume to be exploding, right? Where you can basically, if you care a lot about latency but don't care as much about bandwidth because the signals you're sending across are less, you might go ahead and decide to restructure the way that GPUs are connected intra-rack in different ways. So there's technology that are taking advantage of that, and that could be really cool. Like there's a lot of opportunity because of, in the data center at least, because of how use cases are diversifying and how explosive the volume is. I think it's insane how much coding agents are consuming in terms of AI. We think of like the mom who asks AI to pray for it every time, ChatGPT to pray for it every time she takes off in a plane. This is like we think of like the stupid memes as being the thing that dominates AI, the volume that Anthropic and OpenAI get, but like it's coding, and coding is going to require different infrastructure to support it, and that opens room for the Cerebrases of the world and lots of different people. So I think you got to place bets in this industry, right? And I think that there's people who are doing really cool stuff. We're one of the bets we're placing is a different one, right? We believe that what's happening in the data center, that's where the real volume in chips are today. However, I have to say that I think the physical world is going to make a comeback from a chip perspective. There's a next revolution coming in robotics. We kind of all see this around the corner. People are going to want to take AI, physical AI, into the robotics world to really accelerate manufacturing. And we believe that building incredibly powerful signals processing chips like we're doing is going to be really key there, as well as for other autonomous systems, not just in defense, but like in everything we do. So we believe that like a physical world return is going to happen in the way that, what markets dominate chips, which, it's not the data centers in compute have always been the majority of chips since like the 90s, but we think that there's going to be a shift back because to the physical world, just because AI is going to have to go physical event, or rather we see that coming around the corner with a lot of the startups that are coming out, like Physical Intelligence and things like that, and Feifei's new startup and things like that. So yeah, that's our theory of the world, but there's a lot of room here. Like the world is changing very fast. Compute is increasing as the only thing that matters in terms of what national power and means, and we think that chips are the basis of that. Everyone should become there should be a lot more investment in chips.
We'll continue monitoring right after this message from our sponsors. At every founder dinner in SF, everyone's talking about models and data. Nobody's talking about the real bottleneck in AI adoption. It's the connective tissue, the layer between your models, agents, APIs, and context. Kong gives you the platform to power and govern that connectivity. The control tower that governs your traffic, cuts your costs, and sets guardrails for agent-to-agent interactions. Without it, you're not monitoring the situation. The situation is monitoring you. The infra decisions you make in the next 12 months decide whether you're shipping in the agentic era or posting through it from the sidelines. Because when AI traffic scales 100x, the companies without proper connectivity and governance don't just slow down, they can't function at all. Kong manages all of your AI traffic in motion, giving you the full picture regardless of traffic type, and adding a governance layer regardless of model, agent, or architecture. Fortune 500s run on it, AI native startups ship on it. If you're serious about AI, visit konghq.com. You're in back-to-back meetings all day. You're trying to monitor the situation. You're nodding like you're following along. But somewhere in the back of your head, a little voice is screaming, what was the action item? Did I agree to something? Whose dog was that on the call? That's where Granola comes in. Granola is an AI-powered notepad for meetings. You jot down whatever messy notes you take anyway, and in the background, Granola is quietly turning it all into something a real adult would write. No bots crashing your calls, no distractions, just a clean little notepad that does the heavy lifting so you can focus. During or after the call, you can actually chat with your notes. Ask Granola to pull out action items, help you negotiate your next raise, draft a follow-up email, or coach you through a tough conversation using recipes from Matt Wachari, Lenny Rachitsky, and others. It's the same tech we use to make our podcast notes. Try it once and going back to your old system feels deranged. Head to granola.ai/MTS and get 3 months free with the code granola.ai/MTS. That's granola.ai/MTS. In terms of being the most important thing for major powers to have, the sort of counter argument to this is that, chips don't help you with sort of concrete military objectives in the way that more military hardware does. So like Semi-Analysis posted this morning, like World War III will be decided based on who has more compute. And a lot of people were like, well, how are you going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz with more compute? So how do you?
Okay. Yeah, I think we're pretty, like, if we can't produce, if China and Russia just outproduce us on missiles, yeah, we're in many ways we're screwed. But at the same time, right, let's think about what warfare is going to look like. Yeah, right now we have these, drones are defining what it means to, drones are defining what it means to fight a modern war. That's what Russia and Iran are fighting with. Russia and Ukraine are fighting with. Iran is fighting with that with a large extent, but the Iran war is a more traditional war. I think any future conflict in the Asia Pacific is going to look quite autonomous system dominated. If you take that up a level, then you should begin to consider that the speed, the rapidity with which you can coordinate massive amounts of autonomous resources is going to be something that is going to determine victory on the battlefield, right? I think of, this is a really, really weird way to frame it, but one of the things that Napoleon was extremely good at and why he was incredibly effective against other European armies, which were like less competently led, was because he could coordinate large forces very rapidly across a battlefield to find an advantage and slice through that. If you think about building more and more powerful AI systems that are able to rapidly reorganize their autonomous systems and take out an enemy in the most decisive fashion possible, then yeah, compute matters. The better models will win. The better military models are going to be the ones that are going to have victory on the battlefield. You need industrial weight. We should be building drone factories and missile factories and reindustrializing whatever way we can. But the better model will win. It's also, there's other things you can think about too, right? Like, if you can hack their systems really quickly, if you can produce cyber exploits way quicker than they can, yeah, you're going to be able to shut down large parts of their systems very rapidly. I think as we move into command and control systems that are highly autonomous, better models will produce better results. Speed is going to matter for coordinating attacks. Trust me, it's going to be very hard for us to defend Taiwan if the Chinese can, in a long, extended, protracted conflict, just outproduce us in terms of raw hardware. AI ain't going to fix that. But on some level, I tend to think that compute is going to be one of many decisive factors. I think Noah Smith gets it right. Like, we live in the cyberpunk future. Like, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, we talked about China and semiconductors, and I think a lot of Americans' intuition about China is they're capable of building things, especially frontier technology, at incredible scale very quickly. And yet, the US has a major and durable advantage over China in semiconductor production. So why is that, and what would it take for that to change?
For China to get to where we are? So first of all, we produce a lot of compute in TSMC. I will say this, my controversial opinion is that the day that Intel 14A works, and Intel has as much capacity as TSMC. They have like incredible amounts of capacity. TSMC Arizona, yeah, has capacity, but they're never going to put their lowest node stuff there because they're not stupid. The day that 14A works, the day that Apple and AMD and NVIDIA start really putting volume into Intel's fabs, that's kind of it for Taiwan as a thing that we care about, right? Like, we're going to, once we have the capacity and 14A and our processes work a lot, then yeah, it's over for us caring about Taiwan as much. However, there are a few reasons why TSMC plus Samsung plus Japanese fabs plus Intel are a lot better. And I think number one is that we're really good at design. We're really good at design because we've built design know-how over many, many, many years. And it's not that easy to replicate that in China. We have the best, I mean, we have AMD has set up EDA infrastructure and the compute you need to actually simulate these digital chips in ways that are unbelievably complex and hard to replicate for a Huawei or someone like that who's trying to build a competitive GPU. So we have design talent, we have design know-how, we have the sort of inherited knowledge that you would get, over 50 years of being really good at it. That's something that China can replicate eventually. They produce more engineers than we do, right? Like they will get there. I think
they
the
produce
other
like
thing is
10
that
times as many engineers as we do.
it's wild, right?
Yeah.
This
I
is,
remember
this is
there
one of
was
the pitches.
an argument. I was at Lighthaven. It was Progress Conference or something. And Steve Xu, big China bull, was arguing with somebody else. I can't remember. And he was like, of course China is going to beat the US on raw STEM talent, you idiot. Maybe it wasn't that harsh, but it was something like that because they just produce many more engineering grads. It's 10x.
And they're going to produce a lot of raw STEM talent. We have a really, really great head start. If we can integrate AI into our systems and advance ahead on that, then yeah, we can maintain our head start or maintain our edge. Maintain the how far ahead we are in that race. The other thing is that we have EUV and they do not. And it's a way harder technology to build than I think people get. Yeah, you can take the entirety of ASML and steal their best engineers and put them in Shenzhen, but there are things that come together in these systems that are just really hard to replicate. Zeiss grinds glass in ways that no one has been able to replicate. The Chinese can't replicate it. No one can replicate it. Theo, I've watched their domestic semiconductor equipment industry grow after we put we put those sanctions on them, and man, oh man, it's gotten up there, right? If you're AMAT or you're Lam right now or you're ASML, you better be counting the days down before you're not selling equipment to China. So there's this edge we have in design. There's this edge we have in equipment. I tend to probably agree with Steve to a large extent. Come on. Yeah, they're going to catch up and we're going to have to really work hard to maintain our advantage. We need to figure out ways to bring in higher quality STEM talent. We should bring in every Taiwanese engineer we can find. We need to bring in their engineers too. We need to have a way to bring STEM talent in to make America a place that's friendly to STEM talent globally. That's the sort of immigration we want. We need to invest in making sure that our companies are integrating AI into how they do design. That's a way to maintain our edge. But it's going to be hard, and it's going to require coordination between the government, between industry. I tend to agree with people like Steve Xu. It's pretty hard to maintain an edge in a country that produces so many STEM graduates, that's willing to devote so much in terms of national resources to critical technologies that they care about. I won't name names, but there's some VCs out there that invest in a lot of gambling startups. We need to make sure we maintain ourselves as a place that immigrants in STEM want to come, and we haven't done a great job at that. We need to work on that. And then the second thing is and I think the Trump administration's been really good at this. We need to coordinate national resources and corporate resources towards goals that we care about, like maintaining an edge in semiconductors. I'm excited by some of the things the Trump admin has talked about doing and is executing on. But we need more of that. We look at the Chinese and how they've coordinated resources, and we need to become we need to look in the mirror and be Chinese one morning. We just do. to quote the famous tweet, we need to mimic what they've done very well in many ways. I wouldn't bet if I were any of these semiconductor executives today, if I were talking to AMAT CEO or Lam CEO or ASML CEO or Jensen or Lisa Su, I'd say your market share in China is slowly going to zero. And you need to bet on a world where that's the case. You have time to run down your China business, but it's a limited time. Maybe the Trump admin doesn't come in and, cut off any exports, which I would support in many ways, but like you don't have that much time. And I think in general, maintaining our edge is going to be a closer run thing. And I obviously root for us to do so. But I'm realistic about what's going on.
Yep. Well, Steve, thanks so much for coming on MTS.
Yeah, and I'll happy to join anytime. And thank you so much, Theo. Really appreciate it.
MTS is an ex-native live streaming news and interview show covering technology, business, politics, and culture as it happens. Catch us every weekday live on X, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.